Hello, I'm Lauren. Today we're here to discuss how education might mediate difference and dominance based upon the issues that were brought into focus with the recent occurrence of bullying that was publicised by popular social networking website YouTube and television news programs internationally. The specific age group we have tailored our suggestions for today are Year 6 students. May I introduce my two co-hosts, Elise and Mark. In March 2011, on his way to pick up his school timetable, 16-year-old Casey Haynes was ambushed by a gang of Year 7 students. 12-year-old Richard Gale repeatedly goaded and punched Casey in the face until he finally snapped and lifted his attacker above his head and dropped him to the concrete floor. The incident, which occurred at Chiefly College Dunheved campus at North St Mary's, was filmed on a mobile phone by another student and posted on YouTube, where it went viral and within hours became a global internet sensation watched by millions. With the result of many people labelling Casey a hero for standing up to his bullies, the school suspended Richard, Casey and the student who recorded the incident on their mobile phone for punishment. Following the event, the television program A Current Affair interviewed Casey about the incident and found that he had suffered from bullying for most of his school life due to his weight. He then revealed that he had even contemplated suicide when his self-esteem hit an all-time low. Ironically, in a Today Tonight interview, Casey's bully, Richard Gale, claimed that he was also the victim of bullying for most of his life.
This event has brought awareness to society about the ongoing issue of bullying within today's schools. In this particular situation, the victim, or the hero, Casey, was bullied due to his weight and difference to other students. It made him an other. As John Austin professes, society tends to position others in certain identity locations seemingly instantaneously, with little acknowledgement that what we are actually engaged in is a process of sorting and labelling. In the act of coming to represent self, we project the other, that identity or thing that is not us. Through the alienation of self from other as binary opposites, the fear of difference becomes sediment into various exclusionary and discriminatory discourses and material practices. The students that bullied Casey have found a community identity from what they perceive as shared characteristics. The most noteworthy one to this event being the difference between Casey and their bodies. The larger body shape of Casey, which the others do not share, has become a repository for their fears. They see difference as a deficit and form a collective identity that values thinness and thus despises fatness. Their fear has transformed into exclusionary and discriminatory behaviour towards Casey.
Well, how might we teach about difference from this event?
I suppose we would start off by giving the students an unbiased description of the event. Then the teacher would lead a discussion with the students about what they made of this particular event. Following this, the teacher would explain to the students about individual and collective identity and how these forge assumed identities and labels for others. The teacher and students could hold a discussion about their individual identities and the collective identity of the class and the community. An examination of the differences between the individual students would have to be led by the teacher in a careful and culturally sensitive manner so that no child is isolated due to their difference. The teacher should conclude the discussion by informing the children that no two people are exactly the same and that difference is simply difference. It does not require an implication of deficit. It is crucial for the children to understand that there are numerous possible responses to difference, positive and negative. To help the children gain an understanding about how important a role society plays in representing difference, the teacher could collect newspaper articles and video clips of interviews with the subjects of this event. These can be presented to the students for critical analysis in terms of individual and community identities represented and how they portray difference, diversity and dominance. For example, the teacher could help the students to identify that the bullying occurred because people viewed Casey's weight as a negative attribute. This was because it made him different from the dominant ideals of thinness possessed by the collective identity of the other students. And the exclusionary and discriminatory actions towards Casey were a result of subconscious fear of difference incorporated in the other, forging an irrational aversion.
Since we have brought into focus possible understandings that students can derive from this event, I think it best that we move on to discussing What could be drawn out of this event that might assist learners to deepen their understandings of difference? Mark?
From this event, it is apparent that while identity represents the innate ever-changing core of a person, in representing our true self, we forge an identity for the other from all the characteristics that we don't have and often despise. Our disdain for the characteristics that we force upon the other through binary opposition, an act in which we reason that if we do not possess a characteristic, then our opposite must, is a result of fear towards difference, fear of the unknown. Marginalisation of the other is often evident, as it is in this event, with the existence of group or community identities, and it must be noted that the greater zone of difference between these two, the more likely it is that misunderstandings and tensions are to occur. Also, self-esteem is behind many actions, as John Austin points out. If we are repeatedly served up negative images of ourselves, it is likely that we will become to accept these terms as natural and respond accordingly. In his current affair interview, it is clear that the reason Casey has previously never acted out against his bullies and contemplated suicide was because the constant bullying that he received over his weight had degraded his self-esteem over the years and made him a target for bullies. As it is understood, the people bully others to enhance their own self-esteem. Richard claims that he was bullied in the past, which only emphasises my impression that to rebuild his own self-esteem, he ridiculed Casey. Also, Richard was not the only bully that Casey faced, and I believe that the other bullies, including the students who stood in the background, taunting and laughing, were simply participating in copycat bullying. Copycat bullying refers to how people bully to fit in with other bullies, to be seen as cool. This type of bullying is also a form of enhancing self-esteem, and is a common occurrence. To understand that bullying is unacceptable, students need to have an understanding of the terrible consequences of bullying. They need to understand that just because a negative view of difference may be dominant, doesn't mean that it is natural or realistic.
Thank you for your answer. I would like to add that this event is one of many in which the media has portrayed themselves as ethical in reporting it, but in actual fact have conveniently omitted that media is responsible for consistently reinforcing an image of how people should look. This image is upheld by the general community, bringing with it intolerance towards people who are different. We will now move on to examining the potential this event holds for critical engagement of various identity locations and senses of self.
Cheers.
Smile.
Damn.
In critically examining the various identity locations and senses of self evident in this event, we find that Casey was considered different due to his weight, but also shared a low self-esteem with his bully. Casey's bullies formed a group identity upon the basis of shared characteristics that are dominant within the Australian community, and in doing so assumed negatives of Casey because of the characteristics he possessed that were different to theirs. The sense of self of the bullies valued a media-driven image of how people should look, in which so-called fatness is despised. And despite society's general discriminatory nature towards fat people, when the story broke out, people claimed Casey was a hero for millions because he physically stood up for himself and his bully as a villain. Students could put themselves in the shoes of the various people involved in the event and identify group and individual attitudes, values, beliefs, and physical characteristics from the perspectives of difference, diversity, and dominance. The teacher could then hold a discussion with the students about such topics as how Richard may not be so evil because he was bullied too, or how Casey would be positioned by the media-driven image of how people should look, why none of the people watching try to intervene, how self-esteem played a role in the formation of identities, or whether or not Casey is a hero as he was suspended.
Those were some very interesting ideas that you put forth there, Elise. Mark, how might this event allow one to work as a transformative educator to overcome disadvantage and marginalisation of groups within your classroom and the community?
This particular event incorporates a variety of issues, including self-esteem, ascribing identities, and accepting others for who they are. Examining this event with students in accordance with the above suggestions will allow the teacher to engage the students in activities such as group work that emphasises multiple intelligences or incorporate all the students into a buddy system in the hopes of making the classroom a safe place where disadvantage and marginalisation are non-existent. After discussing identities, difference, diversity and dominance with the students, the teacher would incorporate a policy of tolerance within the classroom. According to an essay written by Sarah Peterson of beyondintractability.org, Tolerance can be described as the appreciation of diversity and the ability to live and let others live. It is the ability to exercise a fair and objective attitude towards those whose opinions, practices, religion, nationality and so on differ from one's own. Schools can reproduce dominant attitudes, values and beliefs, or resist them depending on the actions of teachers, which even unthinking will have significant influence on their students.
With this significant power that teachers have over the impressionable minds of their students, how might this event allow them to reduce discrimination in the community? Elise?
The event has certainly drawn attention to the issues of bullying, self-esteem, labelling, and accepting others for who they are. It seems that bullying is natural, as it frequently occurs all over the world, not just in schools, but also in everyday life. However, discrimination is not natural. Whatever form it takes of difference does not mean deficit, and therefore discrimination due to difference is unfounded. Teachers who address the issue of this event with their students from the perspective of collective and individual identity, difference, diversity and dominance, proceed to adopt the aforementioned policy of tolerance in their classroom. The teachers, they find that their students will try to incorporate this policy into their lives outside of school and possibly influence the ideals of the rest of the community. If this doesn't work, teachers could blatantly address these issues with parents at meetings and use this event as an example with the hope of generating positive understandings of difference and diversity.
Okay, well I believe that is all we have time for, but thank you for watching this video and we hope that it has helped you to understand that this event, like many others, holds content for an educative experience for students and that education might mediate difference and dominance.